Ladies and gentlemen, it's Spoilerin time. So this is the companion show to Cordkillers. Cordkillers, we tell you how to watch. We tell you what gear, what services, what things are coming up to watch. This is when we've watched the stuff. We've actually watched the shows, and we want to talk about them. I'm Tom Merritt, he's Brian Brushwood.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I was saying, like, Cordkillers is all about the movers and shakers, the players in the industry, where we're the chess game, the game of chords, as we call it.
Yes,
and by we, I mean me right now.
We are the pawns in the Matrix.
Yes.
If I may.
Mixed metaphors. We're the
pawns
Matrix
of Thrones.
We're the bishops of sorry.
So we have no movie draft to talk about this week. There will be a winter draft coming up, so keep your ears tuned, your eyes peeled for that sort of thing. We're going to talk about Justified episodes 9 of season 3 and episode 10 of season 3. We're going to catch back up to where we should be. But Brian, Mr. Robot is speeding towards a season finale. And we got some emails about episode 11 of season 2 and also our discussions of episode 10 last week. Well, shall we start with our first email?
Yes, indeed. Although, spoiler alert, this is going to be a very heavily Mr. Robot-focused episode of Spoilerin time. I just spoiled the episode we're about to do of the show.
Oh, you didn't give a spoiler alert, though!
Sorry. I did.
Well, you gave it like a half second right before.
All right.
Absolutely. Matt wrote in and said, did you notice that at least 2 of the episode's music tracks were from Back to the Future? I did notice this, but I didn't know the third. Earth Angel was at the very end, and Night Train by Marvin Berry was in the van near the beginning. But Brian, you pointed out a third.
Yeah, well, specifically, last episode they were talking about it being their favorite movie, and then you have both of those, but then also Davy Crockett. You sit there listening to the Davy Crockett thing, and I'm sure it's in the background, and you got the kid with the raccoon hat or whatever at some point in there as well.
Yeah, so we got lots of Back to the Future allusions around. And then Marcus Hall was among the people who said, I hope by now Brian has seen Darren's demo of how to use the rubber ducky to collect passwords from browser cache. That is supposedly what Angela was doing in Mr. Robot.
Fair enough. It's fine.
Hey, no, I'm not going to let you swing on this one alone because I sat here and you said you can't do that. And I thought, okay, I haven't used the rubber ducky, so I'm going to assume that's right. I didn't jump in and correct you or anything like that because I didn't know either. So it's all of our faults.
Well, so, okay, look, so here's the thing. If you're telling a story, you have a responsibility to take the uninformed and bring them up to speed. You also have a responsibility to respect what the informed know. I don't think you have a responsibility to factor in the misinformed. And I would like to take status as a poor person who was misinformed in this case. And as such, they had no responsibility to bring me up to speed.
Fair enough. All right, let's get into talking about this episode of Mr. Robot. What did you think of our penultimate episode?
Man, this was so weird. This was a weird episode. It was weird from the very beginning. It started off as an adult version of Dora the Explorer, where he talks to us and says, to dream lucidly, say, mind awake, body asleep. Say it with me.
Seriously, like, I was a little superstitious at that point. I'm like, this is a hacker show. I am not going to say that out loud.
Bonnie, okay, because what's funny is the reverse was Bonnie started saying it, and she was like, Brian. I'm like, fine. And so we started saying it along, mind awake, body asleep. And I'm also going to say that persistently throughout this whole thing, as many of you guys know, I don't want to miss anything. And oftentimes there's little clues to context clues that are helpful with, to make sure you get the whole story. I always have closed captioning on. And yes, it's distracting. My eyes keep darting down and seeing stuff. But for example, every time any piece of music shows up, it gives the so-and-so's title of the song plays in the background. And it's like the mere fact that it's there lets me know it's relevant to the story. That's part of the reason that I knew about all 3 songs was because of the closed captions on there. But also later, for the life of me, there's remember later in the episode, the mind awake, body asleep kind of comes back in and fades in the background or whatever. It was great on the closed captioning because it kept like almost interrupting the dialogue. The dialogue is back and forth, and then it kept. And I at this point could no longer hear it in the background. But since that was a thing that was intentionally done, that was an audio cue, it very loudly pointed it out to me on the closed captioning that it just kept cutting to mind awake, body asleep, which I think helped to inform me or remind me constantly that everything that's happening with Elliot is a fever dream or an actual dream, or it's nonsense. It's a cartoon. It's like when they did the Full House thing with Mr. Robot. It's like you can't take anything away from what you just saw because once you say or imply, "Hi, let's go on a dream together," it tells you about the person, doesn't tell you about what's happening.
But see, a lucid dream is one where you're dreaming. So is it that Elliot knows he's dreaming?
Well, he very clearly, he all but said, "Take my hand, let's do this together," and is narrating and breaking down. And by the way, that was one of my so much. Okay, can we just focus on the Elliot dreaming stuff, and then we'll talk about the other characters?
Sure. By the way, since we're talking about this, and because it's relevant exactly to this type of scene, when Rami Malek won Best Leading Actor in a Drama on the Emmys Awards, his first words out of his mouth when he got up to the podium are, "I hope you're all seeing this too."
Oh, that's lovely.
It was brilliant.
That's lovely. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So,
by the way,
that
Rami
little
Malek,
cross of life and art.
Yeah, but real quick, Rami Malek, the person, I bet it would freak me out to see him being chill and calm and laughing and reacting and engaging in eye contact and doing all the social things that Elliot's no good at. That would freak me out.
Yeah. No. I caught a little bit of the red carpet and happened to catch when he walked up, and yeah, he's a normal guy, right? He does not wear a hoodie. He does not avoid eye contact with people, and it is a little weird to see him doing that. I can't imagine what it'd be like in person.
Real quick, it occurred to me, and I know I've already said this about Justified. We've talked about how Justified is really superheroes fighting each other, and they have different superpowers. My superpower is I whip a gun out and apparently kidnap boys. But that's a spoiler for in the future.
That's a different show.
Yeah. Sorry. But I really felt it in this episode of Mr. Robot. This is a story of dueling wizards, and they have different superpowers. Mr. Robot is a spirit creature that can only inhabit through his host. And this is the first time we got to see that paradigm shift where Mr. Robot is, and again, it's in the context of a lucid dream, which you could imply is the time when Elliot falls asleep and Mr. Robot takes over. But at this point, Elliot is the ghost. He's the not real person, and Mr. Robot is the real person. And so I don't know. I adored that they gave us this twist on the setup, and they opened up a new element to the duality of them.
Yeah. Jackie Hearn points out the actual quote was, "Please tell me you're seeing this too."
Oh,
which is even better. I look at this now, just from our conversation here, as the lucid dream is the fact that Elliot is doing the Mr. Robot things, but aware that he's Elliot. So he knows where to go to get the cab. He knows to get in the cab. He's lucid dreaming as Elliot. He's able to actually be there for the first time to see where Mr. Robot goes. That doesn't mean that that's the end of the layers of the meaning of that, mind you. I'm just saying that's one of the layers there. So how do we treat Tyrell in this situation? Are we continuing to lucid dream? And is Tyrell actually there? There is no credence given by the taxi driver that Tyrell shows up in that cab. That Tyrell shouts a lot of apologies at the cab driver, but the cab driver doesn't acknowledge anything and isn't even speaking in English.
Okay, but here's the problem, Tom, is even if the cab driver said in perfect English, yes, there's a gentleman next to you wearing a fancy shirt. He looks like that guy, Tyrell Willick, who was rumored to be at fault for the 5-9 attacks. Is there anything else I can help you with? Even if all of that happened, it would still be suspect because we're watching all of this in the context of a lucid dream that hopefully is following the exploits of the main character under the influence of a different personality.
Right. Although I'd feel a little cheated if they went that far to say none of that happened.
No.
But I suppose you're right that Elliot could be pasting over things in his brain, right?
Well, okay.
Hearing things that aren't really being said.
Right. I mean, it is explicitly stated that this is all a lucid dream, which in English is defined as stuff that did not necessarily happen. It can be implied that maybe through the gateway of lucid dreaming, wizard Elliot personality becomes a spirit, and wizard Mr. Robot inhabits the corporeal vessel known as Elliot Alderman, or what's his last name? Is it Alderman? No,
Alderson.
That's
Alderson.
And it might be that what we're seeing is what Spirit Elliot is able to watch is done with his body, but there's no guarantee of any of that, right? And on top of that, we don't even know that when Spirit Elliot starts screaming at the cabbie, we don't even know if cabbie's actually hearing. Man, we just got nothing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, and you got to be careful, because if it really is nothing in the end, then I'm going to feel cheated. Like, oh, well, then you could be doing that all the time. What Mr. Robot has been great about is, right, well, it was something. It just wasn't quite the something you thought. And I feel like that's where we're going with Tyrell. Eileen, my wife, caught up on Mr. Robot and has gotten so excited about it that she's the one on Wednesdays saying, is it time yet? Why did we cut the cord? DirecTV used to give us the East Coast feed. We could have watched this already.
That's fun.
Words that came out of her mouth this week. And so we're very excited about it. And her reaction was, I think Tyrell Wellick is dead. I think Mr. Robot killed him. But I think this Tyrell is now Elliot's mind's way of dealing with that fact that he is responsible for Tyrell's death. And now Tyrell is an element of Elliot's personality.
And it wouldn't be out of character for him to do that either, right, because he, while Mr. Robot is the dominant character rattling around in his brain, it's not the only character. That entire moment when, to protect him from the ass kicking he was getting, Mr. Robot, shoved him into a sitcom. He experienced his sister and so on and all this stuff.
And Mr. Robot is his father, right? Obviously, he didn't have that personality before his father died. So maybe that's his trigger mechanism for creating these alternate personalities.
Yeah. Although, number one, okay, so here's number one. It would be really, really interesting if Tyrell Wellick wasn't dead. And it would also explain why we're spending so much time paying attention to his widow, unless she's going to emerge as a player in the game. But her character really only seems to be interested in finding out when her husband is coming home. But if he were alive, he wouldn't be showing up in that perfect three-piece suit looking.
There's another interesting probability is that Tyrell isn't dead. Elliot thinks he's dead. Tyrell is an alt, but also a real person still.
Oh, geez. Like he's seeing damn it.
And that's the kind of twist that Mr. Robot does that I am okay with, because I'm like, okay, yep.
Yeah, replaying that entire conversation, but you see through the security camera that he's got like a hobo and a beard and is in hiding, and then meanwhile,
I still have no good idea of what is at the address that Ms. Wellick's bodyguard got so intrigued about.
Yeah, I think that's intentional. I don't know. I will say for the first time, actually not for the first time. I have a confession, Tom. I didn't tell you last week.
Yes.
I played their game just a little bit. There are some television shows where, for example, Better Call Saul does it just about the right amount for my tastes. They show a complete phone number that doesn't have a 555 in it. And I can't help myself. I press pause and I give that number a call. And I get a chuckle when it turns out to be the massage parlor, talking about, fish pedicures or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's great. They thought it through. This is on purpose. That's it. And I know that that's it. I got the one Easter egg for this. Mr. Robot just seems like a bit more of a project to try to deconstruct all the clues and the nested, like they're like
It's a puzzle. No, it's a hacker's puzzle. Yeah.
It's a bit more work than I want to do. But I ended up doing it. Like you watch Mr. Robot going through the numbers, and then I actually pulled up the exact website that he pulled up to get the hex, because they get to a point when they say, it's a phone number, call the phone number. And so I actually wrote down the numbers and I counted them all out. I'm like, wait, there's 11 digits here. That's not a phone number. Well, and then so I went to the website and I put the things in, and it translated to 251 a secret exclamation point. And then later there's a phone number that's in there that if you call, it gives tones and all this stuff. And it was just enough. And also, I got to admit, when Dom put down her business card, FBI agent Dom said, if you think of anything, give me a call. The only thing visible is an email address. So I might have emailed the email address.
You emailed Dom?
Yeah, I got Dom's autoresponder saying that she's out in the field doing some work and maybe a while till she gets back to me. But I adore that they're playing this game. I adore that they're going all in on all of that stuff. I can't make this my life. And I don't want to make it my life to dive in on all that stuff.
Yeah, no, it's tough because these kind of hacker puzzles are a regular thing. And Darren at Hack5 has done lots of them. He does a pen testing seminar where he creates these sorts of puzzles for people to try to figure out. So Mr. Robot, like everything else that they're doing, trying to be as close to that culture as possible, and therefore not making it easy, not making it just a number you call once and that's it. Like playing tones, making you translate hexadecimal code. Like it may not be the hardest hacker puzzle, but it's certainly more sophisticated than, the Lost expanded universe where you just went to the Oceanic Airlines website.
Right. And I guess that's the thing is it began, when it happened with Lost, we were so hungry for more of the story. And I guess as fun as this stuff has been, there's no story-related revelations in any of these. It's sort of a hacking for its own sake. It's sort of a solve the puzzle for the confirmation of knowing that you solved the puzzle, which is fine and I think appeals. I mean, there's a reason at DEF CON fully half the T-shirts I saw were F Society and Mr. Robot related. It struck me how different the game has become, and how much less interested I am in the game, knowing that it's very overtly being played. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Overall, this episode was weird for me for a penultimate episode because it did not advance the story much.
At all.
We got a little bit about Dom, and we got the Tyrell revelation that we're debating whether it's actually a revelation, and if so, what it is a revelation of. We found nothing out about Darlene.
Yeah, well, and that was the other thing is we were all shocked at the ending of last episode where it's like the murder of Darlene's boyfriend right in front of her. But then we cut to let's cover other threads here. We don't see Darlene at all. Presumably, she's picked up by the feds. At this point, she's being questioned, and this is
or she's unconscious. We don't even know.
Oh, that's a very good point. Could be. We also have the very disjointed. Last time we see Angela is her saying, I'm going to turn myself in. I've talked to a lawyer. Next time we see Angela, she's in the back of a van and people in presumably, I was like, oh, cops. And it's like, that's a neighborhood. Well, this is weird, and going through and all that stuff. And then we have the alter ego of Time Hacker coming in and chatting with her. It's a very weird episode, Tom.
Well, yeah, the Angela part was the only section that I wasn't sure I liked. I liked it in an artistic way. I mean, the fact that it was a Commodore 64, that was actually a Commodore 64, doing things that a Commodore 64 would do. You kind of have this weird young girl playing word games with Angela, and then you have, the White Swan come in and sit down and berate her.
The fish dying
but also
randomly.
Praise her. I mean, it's very obviously like this is an elaborate way to break down Angela's personality and get her to do what you want. And it's overly stylized and fun, but it's the kind of thing I might have liked better earlier in the season. This close to the end, I got a little impatient with it.
I was too busy drinking in the nostalgia of that Commodore 64, of the load, 8, 1 start.
Yeah, totally.
That was pretty great. But you're right. I mean, nothing advanced on that stuff. Now, okay, separately, how about this? Because that was a self-contained, strange vignette. It felt very Kubrickian and so on. Another equally strange event, also Kubrickian in a totally different way, is Dom laying down in her bed and just having a conversation with Alexa. That was very strange and did nothing, and I adored every second of it.
No, it was very oddly humanizing for Dom, which the few times we've seen her in her apartment, they have done that. To kind of show her loneliness. Like here's what she has to come home to as Amazon Echo. And the beautiful piece of product placement where it did not feel like unnecessary product placement, especially because my wife has had those conversations with Alexa in front of me and now thinks Amazon Echo's Alexa is a bitch because she won't answer the question, do you like Eileen? She just says, I have no response to that. And now there's a feud and she refuses to use the Echo.
That's amazing.
So watching that with Eileen was actually a fun thing because she's like, oh, see? Yeah. See how what she's being like to Dom? I don't like her.
She's got a favorite and it's not me.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you told me as a kid that in the future, I don't know, I guess I'd probably accept it immediately. But it's remarkable to me that we live in the future and there's a literal dialogue scene between an FBI agent and her artificially intelligent robot that lives in her house. And as a viewer, there's literally nothing remarkable about the scene.
No, it sounds like an 80s sitcom, right? It sounds like Alf era stuff. Like
yeah,
the
right?
FBI director and a robotic companion. It's not a robot, but yeah, it's an AI voice recognition, whatever. And yeah, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing that happens.
So forgive me, but I am having the hardest time remembering the very last part of Angela's conversion scene or whatever. The last thing I remember is her saying is White Rose saying, "What if I told you that everything was for a purpose and that it was going to?" Did they say advance mankind or transform mankind or something? There was something like very science fiction-y sounding about the way she phrased it. And then next time we see her, it's like she's been infected by the pod. She's a pod person now. And she's like, everything is fine. Do not call me. I love that my parents are dead. Serve the greater good.
Yeah, I think that's it. She has been reprogrammed. And that's why we had to have that long stylized sequence is to show the reprogramming in effect. But
I just wish, that's fine if you want to, and they're probably intentionally not making it look like a reprogramming for reasons that we don't yet know. Because if it is a reprogramming, I would like to see the act of breaking her down instead of just...
Well, but that's what Mr. Robot does. And I kind of took it as we're supposed to doubt whether she's actually reprogrammed or just playing along, because that is also something Angela does. And so there's another question to be answered still. Like, did she do this because she knows they're listening and they think they broke her and this is her way in, is to play along, or did they actually break her?
So we come to the most refreshing part of the entire story to me. There's only one scene that is not dreamlike, that is not a strange vignette, that is concrete and believable as hell. And that's when our master of E-Corp bullies the guy, I guess one of the Fed guys or whoever he's talking to, saying, hey man, yeah, we're taking over the world, but at least it'll be an American company doing it. Like somehow, and I can't even remember the guy's name. I know they mentioned it, but somehow this guy's become my favorite character on the show.
It's real politic, right? It's like, listen, you can have the Chinese do this or you can have us do this. You choose.
Yeah.
And the most interesting part of that is we know that means more than just like, hey, we know the Chinese are up to stuff like this. This guy is speaking from direct collaboration with the Chinese, where he is struggling mano a mano to make sure that he has the upper hand in this conspiracy that he is engaged with directly with a Chinese organization.
Yeah. And I love the practicality of it. It's like, yeah, I've hated you since the day I met you.
But that doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. A tragedy can still be profitable. You're gonna take tragedies happen in either way. You want some money
too? Feelings aside. Yeah, it's a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
No, it's a rich episode, even if it was an impatient episode. It was like I needed to sit still for my own good and see all this stuff because I can't think of one single thing in here that won't pay off.
Yeah, that's the weird part is I never got bored and looked away the entire time.
I never got
even
bored.
Though so little happened, and even though I wanted
I
things,
very carefully chose impatient because I was never bored.
Yes, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap up with episodes 309 and 310 of Justified Loose Ends. And Guy walks into a bar. Raylan going back after Quarles. He explains Tanner's involvement with Quarles and the blowing up of Sheriff Napier's car. Raylan clears Boyd's name. In that episode, Boyd wins over the crowd in favor of Shelby in the town hall meeting. And yet, as we find out, a guy who walks into a bar, Sheriff Napier wins the election. Or does he? Because Boyd outmaneuvered him by making sure that his sister's job with the county disqualified Sheriff Napier, thus making the vote count irrelevant and throwing it back to Boyd's man. Raylan is chasing down all the people involved with Dickie's crime, but none of them will testify. So Raylan goes to testify in favor of Dickie. And then bails at the last moment and says, what the hell, let him free.
Well, yeah, not in favor of Dickie. He's testifying in...
But he was supposed to testify that Dickie should go back to jail, and instead he said, forget it, just let him go.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we'll start with that. It sounded like Raylan showed up and they said, yeah, just as long as your testimony is in English, it sounds like he's going back to prison. And then we walk in and we see
and then
Dickie.
He testified in English.
Well, no. Okay, we see Dickie saying that prison is his family and he feels like he's got to put his time. Did I hear that right? He was saying he wanted to go back to prison and that's his family. And then something about that is what caused Raylan to flip?
I took it as Dickie saying prison was my family. And so when they hurt me, I had to do what I did to protect my family. And that's why I need to be released. Because the only reason I left the prison was I was trying to protect, my boys. And I was forced into it. I was compelled into it. And then I think Raylan just decided that he didn't want to play the game anymore. And as he was talking, came to the realization of like, that's what I do. I hunt people down. I'll hunt Dickie down. Why go through this charade? Let's let him out. He'll do me more good out there where I can follow him than he will in prison. Yeah.
Okay. So, the last episode we watched began with, the Oxy girls having, wait, is this right? Am I remembering this right? With the Oxy girls trying to knock over the... No, that was last episode. Okay. Sorry, man. I have your disease now, Tom. They're all blending together. I was doing real good, and then I watched two in a row.
Then you watched two in a row, right? And
now it's all over.
Blended. No, it's absolutely true. Ava killed the pimp in Loose Ends, the first of the two episodes we're talking about.
Correct.
And protected the girl. In order to
that's right. She sort of called the bluff. She got the word from the dude who's in the wheelchair saying like, hey man, we can't go, this guy paid protection, we can't go saving everyone. And so she's like, all right, I'll make the call right now, and made it in front of his face like, bleep, yeah, take that. Then he shows up and she pops him in the chest and they clean up and then it's fine. Then they have the awkward conversation with Boyd where they just sort of, Ava informs Boyd of what happened and how it's all cleaned up and don't worry about it. And Boyd's like, this is actually very good parenting. He didn't overreact. He didn't freak out. He just said, he's like, well, that's not what we discussed. We'll have to have a conversation about this. But for now, I'm glad you told me,
Yeah. It's going to come back, but not in a bad way, more in a like, well, now remember when I trusted you to do this and I don't know if I'm going to trust you.
I don't even know that it'll come back. I think what the whole purpose of this was to introduce what I assume the next plot line of Ava becoming a madam running a whorehouse.
Yeah, she's going to take on the pimp's position. Exactly.
Right.
And funnel that money to Boyd, and that's why Boyd's going to be okay with it. No, you're right. That's a fair point. Meanwhile, I think the only other major plot point was Quarles having a gun waved in his face by a guy who accused him of kidnapping a young man right after he had revealed to Wynn that he was trafficked as a young child by his father. And then, of course, the revelation at the end that you mentioned in the Mr. Robot conversation that he, in fact, did capture a boy.
Yeah. All of that, neither here nor there. Guess who my new favorite character is? Wynn Duffy has the best nonplussed expressions and the best flat statement of what's happening without appearing to be perturbed in the least of what's going on. And this is the moment I realized it. And in that, I suddenly am rolling the tape back and it's like, oh my God, this is how he's always been. I just finally realized his gig now. And it's amazing.
Yeah. He came off as the big bad guy when he was nonplussed at your pleading, right? They only showed him in relation of like, oh, right. Wynn, please have mercy on me. Well, I'm not gonna, right? And he's a badass. But it is exactly, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's exactly the same reaction when he's sitting with Quarles, but it puts him in an entirely different light of, here's a guy who just really wants to get his job done.
Yes. And it's like, he's slightly annoyed. That's the most you get out of Wynn Duffy on anything. Whether you're interrupting him covering up a murder scene with paint, whether you're interrupting him having a meeting with a high as balls drunk ass Mr. Quarles, just whatever it is. He's just like, well, this is apparently happening now. That's not what I would have picked, but
right. I guess I have to listen to this. I guess I have to deal with this now with the guy waving the gun.
But even that's more emotion than we get from Wynn Duffy.
You're absolutely right. By the way, and that scene actually is the scene that knitted together something unrelated to Justified, because the guy that plays Wynn Duffy plays the police chief in Angie Tribeca. Angie Tribeca is a police academy, like airplane style comedy. And I was like, how is this guy? He's really good in both, but that was the crossover point of like, yeah, because he's just the guy who's mildly annoyed with stuff. And that fits the chief of police in the comedy exactly as well. So
on the other side of the spectrum, we saw a lot of pathos from Mr. Quarles. That was a strange way to handle a man with a gun pointed at you, is to confess and lay bare. Not so much for that guy, because I assume, something, he's going to, take care of the guy. Wait, was the guy in the bathroom tied up the guy that he hugged and told the story to?
I don't think so, but I don't really know.
Yeah, I didn't really pay attention.
It was hard to tell.
I just figured it was him and his appetite grabbing a boy.
Yeah. Well, it made sense to me that he would face down that guy and say, "I don't have anything to do with your guy," but actually have kidnapped him.
Sure.
Like he's that.
Well, I thought the guy waving the gun saying so, because it was a familiar name and it's already lost. I thought that was the guy who blew up the car that they shot or that they dealt with.
Yeah. I was a little put off by the ID of that person and that whole situation. But
sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously who's who is not what you're thinking about when you see that amazing performance from the guy playing Mr. Quarles. And I got to admit, I got fooled by the fake out. They set up clearly the quick draw superhero standoff, and I actually moved the mouse to look. I'm like, we're only 30 minutes in, and I remember thinking like, okay, it's been long enough. I kind of don't mind this coming back, and then I'm like, use your power, super draw guy, and instead, they faked it out with shotgun. New Ava, I guess is her Nueva. She's Hispanic.
Nueva Ava.
Yeah, Nueva Ava. Nueva Ava suddenly has a shotgun there, and they go a different direction. But I was surprised. It made me realize how long it's been since we saw that initial quick draw conceit in season 1, and I was really glad that just to get echoes of it in that moment.
Yeah, and it was a great solution, I think, to what we want to see is the Quarles Raylan showdown, right?
Sure.
We want to see the high noon quick draw between those two, right? Because Quarles knows something Raylan doesn't, but Raylan's so fast, maybe it doesn't matter.
Right.
And like you say, it was like, really? We're going to see this now? I kind of felt like something else was going to interrupt. I didn't expect it to be Nueva Eva. But yeah, when she pulled the gun out, I'm like, oh, she kind of ruined it. Like I could tell Raylan was looking kind of annoyed. Like, I really just wanted to put this guy in the ground. And if I didn't, at least it would all be over.
And by the way, I did like the counterintuitive and yet psychologically totally correct way that the what happened right afterwards, because in that moment you would think somebody who owns a bar and then somebody comes to cause a fight with your bar with your bouncer, and the bouncer shoots a hole in your roof and orders all your patrons out of the bar, you'd think they would be upset. But in those moments they're so electrically charged that you have that adrenaline rush that oftentimes, that's when you get that huge arousal. So it did make sense that they would immediately hook up in that moment.
And nice bit of continuity showing the bullet holes shining up through the floor.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. We will continue watching Justified next week and, of course, wrap up Mr. Robot's season finale. Thank you all for watching. We'll spoil you next time.
Yeah. That's true. What you just said. That's
true facts.
No, that's not a lie.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.